ADHD Rewired, episode 533. Since 2014, this has been the podcast for ADHD adults who have really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and an ADHD certified clinical services provider by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. You can learn about our coaching and accountability groups, our virtual co-working community, and more, all at ADHDrewired.com. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Learn more about our offerings, including our monthly live Q&As, get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter, and more, all at ADHDrewired.com. And if this is your first time listening, welcome. Don't forget to hit subscribe or follow on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Today you're hearing our third installment of ADHD Rewired's Coaches Roundtable. These are 20-minute conversations between coaches Brian Entler and Kristen Martz and I to provide you kind of an insider look, or I guess listen, since this is a podcast, as we discuss and process content and the discussions that are coming up each week in our coaching groups. If you missed last week's, we talked about writing letters to our ADHD, and I even shared my most recent Dear ADHD letter, where for the first time ever, I wrote a big FU to my ADHD. You can hear that on the previous episode 532. And don't worry, my ADHD and I are on good terms again. But before we dive into today's conversation, where we're going to explore the anatomy of a to-do list, we want to make sure that you know that our $999 early bird registration discount is back for our summer sessions, and registration is going on now. I'm still not sure what day this is going to get released because as I mentioned the last couple of weeks, I'm without an editor. But either way, in case I release this before our kickoff event, that is or was on May 16th at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 Eastern. If that has passed, you have two more chances. The next event will be on Thursday, May 23rd at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern. And your last chance to join us for only $9.99, no matter what section you join, will be on Monday, May 27th, which is Memorial Day in the US. And we're going to do that at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 Eastern. I'll have more information about this at the end of today's conversation, or you can go now and get your name on the interest list at coachingrewired.com. If you are wanting to join us, especially if you want to lock in those early bird discounts, don't wait until the last minute to take action because there are a few pre-registration items that you'll need to take care of first. Again, learn more about it at the website. Go to coachingrewired.com. Again, that's coachingrewired.com. Okay, let's get into it. All right, welcome back to week, 3 of the Coaches Roundtable. All right, so last week we talked about writing letters to our ADHD and talking about that sort of relationship that we have with our ADHD and how important it is to address some of the emotional issues around our ADHD in order to really make sense of any of the planning and productivity type stuff. So this week in group, we are talking about to-do lists. So how has that been going so far in your sections, Kristen and Brian?
Well, if I might point out, just to put this in the context of the structure of our group, we do talk a lot about the underlying emotional experience because that needs to be addressed. But this is also a productivity-based course where we have a lot of productivity tools where we take, tools that we're already familiar with, things like to-do lists, and reimagine them and re-engineer them to work better for ADHD brains. I always ask folks I stump all my coaching clients when I ask them at the beginning of a session, I'm like, okay, where did everyone learn how to use a to-do list? And no one ever has an answer to that question. The real answer is we've been mimicking how we see other people using them our whole lives, but those people are probably neurotypical. Why would we expect to have a tool that's designed by and for neurotypical people work the same way for us as it does for a neuroatypical person? So that's where we start from. So then we start picking it apart and looking at different ways to do it. And for the general structure of our course, we go through them, but we're not just coaching about productivity tools. Whenever we try to change a habit or behavior, something that's being reinforced, there's always going to be some kind of pushback, some defensiveness. We're contradicting people's defense mechanisms about this, and maybe some shame triggers. So other coaching things always come up around it. So we kind of do those two things at the same time. We coach around productivity tools, but we also coach about what comes up when we talk about the productivity tools. But to answer your question, it's been going great. We had a really great session today. I really like to do the to-do list thing because this is one of the first examples we get to bring people's real life data into coaching. I prompt them the week before, and I'm like, if you're already using a to-do list, bring them in. Let's look at the real examples and workshop with them. And then we also have a feature where in our accountability teams, which we rolled out last week also, we have people posting a daily top 3 as a simplified to-do list. And then this provides an opportunity to get some structure, but it also gives us an opportunity to group workshop how we're using that tool. So this actually turns into a really lively discussion, and as it did for me today.
Kristen, how about for you?
Yeah, I told them last night, this is one of my favorite sessions. um, and I want to add too with our A-team rollout, which happened at the beginning of the week. We talked a lot about accountability too. So we kind of guide them with that ramp into how are we accountable to our to-do lists? And my group latched on to the question of, and maybe I did this on purpose, I'm not sure. We asked them, how old is your oldest item? And oh man, the vulnerability that came out, the shares, the shame that filled the room, that we ended up, exploring around, well, what can we do with this shame? And why is that shame there? And, does it have to be those things? And how is it helping you progress forward? So we kind of had a really nice, I don't know, a good 15-minute. I felt like I was pushing through the last stuff. But that's what group is all about. It's finding out, where is this group? Each session can feel different every season. And that's what's kind of magical about it. It just so happened there were a good handful of people who did share outwardly. And I'm sure I saw a lot of nodding heads too for thinking of those things that, oh my God, I've got one that's 7 years old and I still have to do it. There's, or the outcome is horrendous kind of thing. So yeah, it was nice. It was a little different for me, my experience with to-do lists. Yeah.
And I've always, every session that I've done of the to-do list session, what resonates and challenges members, the range is huge, right? Like there's someone who was saying that I just don't get that feeling of satisfaction when I cross something off the to-do list. And so like I asked the group, how many people experience that as well? And there were a number of people who like, yeah, it's like, it's just another thing that got done and I'm moving on. Right. Someone else who was like, oh, I don't like doing to-do lists. Like it feels like as soon as it's something that I write down to do, like I immediately just feel resistance towards it. Right. And it's like, okay, like these are all experiences that a lot of people have. And we've got other people who have these complex systems that have been working for them, and we always tell people to wherever you are, that's where we start. Right. And one of the tools that I created is this diagnostic assessment of your to-do list. And the point of it is to be able to identify where are those areas of the to-do list that may benefit from some additional focus, because everyone's going to have some different things on their to-do list that challenges them. But one of our big focuses on this exercise is about the language that we use. And I think it is something, it's sort of like this, borrowing from some of the work that I used to do in autism around like the hidden curriculum for like for social stuff. I feel like it's like the productivity version of that for ADHD. It's like the hidden curriculum. We talk about like common things we see on ADHDers to-do lists. Doctor, Well, what the hell does that mean? We knew it at the time we wrote it down, but it's been on our list for 3 years, so we don't have no idea what it actually means anymore, and maybe don't even realize that we don't know what it actually means anymore. Right?
It could be from yesterday. You put doctor, and if you have more than one doctor, tomorrow you might not know what that means.
Right. Good.
Oh yeah, and like the way I like to frame it, I start with a couple examples of those doctor or one word things, and then I say, okay, what happens when you encounter that? How would you describe the mental process when you encounter that? And it's like, usually people stumble, they get confused by the question, but then they realize you have to expend mental energy to figure out what doctor means. And the more energy you have to expend just to get started, the less likely you are to activate on it. So then we start into strategies. How do we make this easier for us to interpret? How do we, instead of doctor is cryptic, how do we add specificity and context? Because that kind of makes it a lot easier for us to activate on it.
Right.
I have a funny share from last night around vision verbs.
Okay. And have we introduced that concept yet? I don't think we did here.
You said vision verbs a minute ago.
Yep. Let me quickly define that. So, for people who have looked at productivity stuff, they often talk about, verb your to-do list or make them, action oriented. The problem with the idea of verbing our to-do list and just as a regular verb is things like look into is kind of a verb, and or talk to is a verb, but that doesn't actually tell you what needs to happen explicitly. And so we add this idea of a vision verb. So instead of look up or find out, which, and I can guarantee right now, if you looked at my to-do list, I probably have a look into or a find out on my own to-do list right now. But Google is a better vision verb because it gives you the exact context of where you need to be for that action to take place, right? Instead of the talk to, it's the call, text, email. Like, how is that discussion going to take place? All right.
This is a beautiful lead in. I asked somebody to, if they had doctorate, what could you say differently? And one of my members says, contact the doctor. And I went, hey, Dr. Harris.
Yeah. Are you planning to write him a letter or write them a letter?
I just yelled out, I go, I tried to contact Dr. Harris, and they were at first, some people laughed right away. Some people, it just like, it with my ADHD impulse funny bone was on, and it was just giggling so I was like, see that example? Contact could also be, I touched them. You can continue to vision it even more every time.
Right. And how many people do we experience where they might have call and make an appointment to get it for a dental cleaning. Okay, great. And then we find out that what they really need to do is they need to find a dentist. They don't actually have a dentist. Like, that is a completely different task than scheduling an appointment, right? And so, this idea of the anatomy of the to-do list looks at things like that. So we have these vision verbs. So really, like, what is that first action step? What is it really? Then we have some of the sort of contextual pieces. So like, what actually needs to take place? We talked a lot about the if this then that sort of framework within a to-do list. It's funny because how frustrating is it when we have a task to do and then we do the task and now it just generates another task. And I think to normalize that experience, I just say, that's just called adulting. Tasks often create tasks. You do the task, now you have another task. And so even as simple as like, whatever the task is, and part of what you write on the task is, once you've done this, then identify the next task. So you've already sort of scaffolded that next step for yourself.
One of my great examples that I've just stuck with every time is, we talked about the shame that was coming up for people, and sometimes just the dread of doing things like we don't like making phone calls, being put on hold and all that. And maybe we don't like going to the dentist, and we finally got in the courage and we found a little pocket of time, and I'm going to call and make an appointment for then. And even if it's a month away, sometimes dentists are scheduling out 2 months. And you call and you go, okay, I'm excited. I want to make an appointment, and I want to look at this date on this afternoon. And the next thing you hear is, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Harris doesn't see patients on Thursday afternoon. And you have nothing ready for the if this
freeze,
and that.
Right? Freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And then let me call you back, and you're right back.
Yeah,
at square
that's
one.
a bigger task than going, okay, let me shift. I've got some other options here.
What else has come up for each of you on this? We also have the why, the importance of including the why.
Oh yeah, I love a good why statement, and I work why statements. I don't just contain it to week 3. I put why statements into almost many different conversations. A why statement is something that gets us in touch with why it's important to us, which can prompt an emotional reaction, prompt emotional investment when maybe that connection isn't clear. ADHD folks, we often have a difficult time activating on tasks. It takes much more energy for us to do that than a typical person. So one way we can make it easier is to reduce the executive function needed, but also to boost the emotional investment by reminding ourselves why it's important. And that can get us back in there. I had a coaching client who had been struggling. She said one of her repeating to-do items on her list was schedule a veterinary appointment for her cats. And she just seemed to be forgetting about it over and over. And she had a shame issue about it. Felt terrible about it. And then, so we broke it down to to-dos, how to schedule that. But then I said, why is this important to you? And she says, well, and she just did had never even contemplated why it's important. It's obvious, but it's in the background. But let's bring it out of the background to be like, well, it's obvious because I love my cats. And you know what? She came to the next week at the one thing she checked in and she said, I totally scheduled those appointments.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And Russell Barkley talks about the different EF sort of networks, and what this does is it identifies what he calls the hot network, where it connects to that emotional part of our brain and our amygdala, those emotional responses, to the prefrontal cortex. So it connects the why to the what. One of the challenges is with ADHD, and also one of the positive parts of ADHD, is when our why is super clear, watch out. Because it's hard to interfere when we have a clear why. We will get the thing done when we have passion behind what we are doing. What happens is we put something on our to-do list. In the moment, we maybe understand why it's important. And then we think we still remember why it's important a week or two later when we're looking at this task and not realizing we actually don't. So it's a form of scaffolding to include the why on your to-do list. And does it take a little bit longer to write this stuff out? Yep. But think about how long we sort of wrestle with things that are just sticking around on our to-do list. Or even worse, I know I've done this so many times, where I'll start working on a task that I've already done and I just forgot to cross it off.
That brings up that metaphor I love, where Abe Lincoln had 4 hours to go chop down this tree. He spent 3 hours sharpening his axe. Think how smooth and easy that tree went down in just an hour. That's kind of, that really fits in with the to-do list to me, really activates me.
And I just want to point out, the whole idea of engaging the why. We were talking at the beginning of this recording and the previous recording about the importance of addressing our underlying emotional needs that can stand in the way, that can obstruct our executive function. Here, we also address the reciprocal, how we can hack or engage with those emotional points to give us activation energy. So there's two sides of the coin there, of the equation there. Emotions can stand in our way our emotional baggage can stand in the way if we're not addressing it, but we can also use it and leverage it to our advantage.
Absolutely. And that's sort of the idea. And, one of the things I tell people in group, because, almost every season, people be like, this just seems like so many extra steps to have to do. And it's like, yeah. And think about what's the trade-off. And I always encourage people, right now we're in learner mode. Try these things out, experiment with it. And I tell people, once you really get the hang of this, you'll figure out what kinds of tasks are really beneficial to include all this other stuff in, and what kinds of tasks can you break all the rules and just put a noun down because you know exactly what it is that you need to do. Right?
Well, let's think about this a different way. You can spend time on the front end, or you can spend time that the emotions get more involved on the other end. You're still going to spend the same amount of time, and one of them kind of makes you feel bad.
Yeah. And usually when we do it on the far end of it, it ends up taking more time and more executive function, which will lead us to next week's, where we talk about the sort of the foundation of daily and weekly planning with looking at our routines. Because we know we're going to do our stuff in the morning. Does it make sense to change this sequence of what we do? Have we thought about all that transition time between tasks? Do we actually have any idea how long it takes us to go from I need to leave the house to actually be out of the house? For me, it's like 7 to 13 minutes. I still don't understand why, but I've tracked it, so I know. So we will be back next week talking about that. Kristen Martz, Brian Etler, and everyone out there listening, thank you. So what's been sticking around on your to-do list for so long that you don't even know what it means anymore? Maybe you've had group on your to-do list and didn't remember what it meant. But what it meant was that you wanted to go to coachingrewired.com to join our summer coaching sessions. Or maybe you've had Join ADHD Rewired's coaching and accountability groups on your to-do list for a while, but do you have your compelling why included on this item? What is your why for joining an intensive coaching program like ours? What is your why for waiting? Maybe you've been waiting for that perfect time, or until you saved up, or even waiting for an early bird special that would allow you to sign up for any of our sections for only $999. And you can do that now, but after Memorial Day on May 27th, our early bird special will be over, and we will be raising our prices. And you might be wondering, by how much? Well, as soon as I decide, I'll let you know. And we do offer a few payment options, including using PayPal credit, which allows qualified applicants in the US to pay over 6 months at 0% interest, which is a great way to invest in yourself if you are on a budget. So we are holding 3 early bird registration events. Our first one is on Thursday, May 16th at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 Eastern. Our second one is on Thursday, May 23rd at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. And your last chance to join us at this amazing early bird rate of only $9.99 will be on Memorial Day in the US, which is Monday, May 27th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 Eastern. So don't miss your chance to invest in your ADHD during this early bird incentive. All the details are at the website, so go to coachingrewired.com and get on our interest list, and we'll send you all the information that you will need to complete your pre-registration steps. And even if you've been just casually interested in joining our groups, I want to encourage you to add your name to that list as well. We have a bunch of really, really great emails queued up for you that are filled with lots of great content, from a 5-part email series on time tracking, and we have another series all on planning, and we even have some downloadable PDFs for you as well. So get your name on our interest list and start receiving those high impact emails, as well as getting your invitation to join us this summer. We know that many of you have been feeling the pinch of inflation and the economy, so we really do hope that if our previously higher prices made our program out of reach for you, that you'll be able to take advantage of this early bird discount. Summer sessions start July 11th and go through September 20th. Check the website for section days and times. We have morning, mid-afternoon, and evening sections available. All sections meet 3 days a week. Learn more and see schedule details at coachingrewired.com. And if you've been listening to ADHD Rewired for a while and you've gotten a lot of value out of this podcast, please consider becoming a patron by supporting our Patreon page at adhdrewired.com/Patreon. As I've shared in recent episodes, I recently went from 70 hours of paid administrative support to 0. So if you value this podcast, I want to ensure that we can continue to create content like this that comes out regularly. Your support on Patreon has never been more critical to our mission. Having a podcast editor for weekly episodes runs a little bit more than $500 a month on average. Your support can help me hire a new editor soon, and would be really helpful as I am trying to recalibrate some things here at ADHD Rewired so I can keep supporting the ADHD community in a sustainable way. Check out the perks, but I'm really asking you to show your financial support for this show if you are able to do so, and especially if you've been listening for a while and this show has been helpful for you. Even just a few bucks a month can be really helpful. And if you can't support us financially, there are other ways you can support us too. Have you reviewed ADHD Rewired on your podcast app yet? Please don't make me start begging for reviews. Or worse, I could write cheesy jingles that will get stuck in your head until you leave that review. Something like this. Drop a line, rate us high, help our podcast soar to the sky. Your feedback is gold. Let it be told on your favorite app. Don't be shy. Okay, that actually probably needs some work, but seriously, please leave a review. It really does help. And then tell your friends, your family, your therapist, your coworkers, and anyone else you come into contact with to share this podcast with them, including your in-person and online support groups. Oh, and hey, do you have some important work to do? You know, that stuff that's kind of boring, but still important. Do you want to co-work with other ADHDers? Join ADHD Rewired's virtual co-working community at adultstudyhall.com. It's only $19.99 a month, and it's free to try for the first week. And join me for my personal favorite Adult Study Hall session. It's the Pomodoro Dance Party on Friday, May 24th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. We do this every fourth Friday of the month, and we'll be doing 2 50-minute focused work blocks. And after each work block, I'm going to be your dopamine dancing DJ as we dance for 10 minutes. That's 2 dance parties, 2 50-minute focused work sessions on Friday, May 24th, only at adultstudyhall.com. That's adultstudyhall.com. Lastly, if you've recently applied to join our Facebook community, right now I don't have the bandwidth to process your application, but I do hope in due time we'll be able to get those applications processed to get you in, so I do appreciate your patience. And I really just want you all to know how much I really do genuinely appreciate you. And I've been hearing from some of you, and some of you have been reaching out to me over email and on social media, just kind of offering your support and encouragement as you've been hearing our recent episodes, as I've been sharing with all of you that we've been kind of going through some hard times over here at ADHD Rewired. And I just want you to know that it really, really does mean a lot to me. So thank you for listening and for being just awesome members of the ADHD community, and for doing your part. So thank you so much, and we will be back with you hopefully next week. If not, it'll be soon after that. Thanks.